Hey guys, tonight we're taking you somewhere hot, sticky, and just a little bit dangerous. Imagine waking up in a creaky old bungalow deep in the jungle hills of Colonial Ceylon, modern-day Sri Lanka. The windows are open, but the air doesn't move. Mosquitoes bounce lazily off your arms as you swat in slow motion, still tangled in the thin, sweat-damp sheet. You hear it before you even open your eyes, the rhythmic chant of Tamil pickers somewhere out in the fields, the clang of metal against wet wood, and the low creak of ceiling fans that haven't worked properly since 1897. You're already late for the tasting room, and you haven't even brushed your teeth. Not that you'll be using your mouth for anything pleasant today, because you, my friend, are a tea taster. Not in the casual, let's sip chamomile and journal kind of way. No, you're the official palate of the British Empire's grand tea enterprise, and if your tongue fails, an entire cargo hold's worth of Ceylon's finest could be deemed unsellable. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stagger out of bed. The wooden floorboards are slick with last night's humidity. There's no point showering. Clean doesn't last long here. You throw on a linen shirt yellowed at the armpits, and step into a world soaked in 98% humidity and colonial bureaucracy. Outside, the sky's a surreal watercolour of pink and orange, but it's already unbearably warm. You pass the laundry boy, who offers a silent nod, his eyes bleary. He's been up since 4, boiling water for the manager's tea. Not yours, of course. You'll be drinking boiled tannin for breakfast. The bungalow sits high on a slope, with a sweeping view of emerald terraces. Neat rows of tea bushes stretch in dizzying mathematical precision, sliced by footpaths and shaded by the occasional wild jacaranda. It would be beautiful if you didn't know what it takes to keep those rows so perfect. The factory lies downhill, a long concrete rectangle with arched windows and peeling paint. Inside, the scent hits you like a brick. Damp leaves, old wood, metal dust and something else. Acidic, like citrus left too long in the sun. It's the smell of 1,000 leaves slowly dying so your mouth can judge them. The workers are already in motion, their hands a blur over sorting trays. Wicker baskets full of leaves are tipped and spread, the rustle of tea blending with the low drone of conversation in Sinhala and Tamil. You nod to a supervisor who barely glances up from his clipboard. In the tasting room, a long wooden table waits for you like a surgical slab. Rows of white ceramic bowls are already arranged, each one labelled in pencil with a number and a state code. Behind them, identical cups. Behind those, a line of tiny white spoons. It's like a tea ceremony designed by an accountant. You sit. The metal chair creaks. A junior taster enters with a metal jug and begins pouring hot water over pre-measured piles of dried leaves in each bowl. The room fills with steam, fogging the window glass and curling your hair at the temples. Your first taste is always the worst. Not because it's bad tea, just because your mouth isn't ready. You scoop, slurp, swish, spit. The motion is automatic, almost violent. You need air in the slurp or you won't get the full aromatic profile. It sounds ridiculous. It feels ridiculous. But this is how the Empire decides if a shipment is worthy. Your job is to detect the undetectable. Does this tea carry the coppery tang of metal pipes, a hint of mildew from improper drying, maybe even the ghost of cinnamon from a nearby field? Historians still argue whether this obsession with flavour notes was science or snobbery, but your stomach doesn't care. After 6 cups, you feel hollow. A taster's breakfast is mostly spit. You swish with warm water between each test. You spit into a large enamel basin that you swear used to be used for pig feed. You resist the urge to count how many others have used this basin before you today. Outside the window, a child runs barefoot across the factory yard. He's laughing, chasing a chicken, utterly unaware that the adults around him are processing the substance that fuels empires and breakfast tables alike. And you? You're just trying to stay upright. The caffeine will hit soon, making your hands jittery and your mind weirdly sharp. For now, though, your mouth tastes like grass and brass and maybe a bit of despair. Fun fact, the tongue is a muscle, and by mid-morning yours feels like it's been lifting weights. It's numb, it throbs. You would kill for a mint, but flavour interference is a fireable offence. Back in England, they imagined tea growing in sunny harmony, plucked by smiling girls in colourful saris. Nobody thinks about the guy sweating in a concrete box, spitting into a rusted bowl, praying that batch 27 doesn't taste like old rope again. You sigh, rinse, slurp, spit. Only 273 cups to go. The door swings open behind you with a thunk that means only one thing. The manager has arrived. You don't need to turn around to know it's him. His boots echo on the factory floor like a metronome of disdain. Batch 14 was off yesterday, he mutters, standing too close to your shoulder. You can smell his cologne, something sharp and out of place in this climate, like citrus mixed with pomposity. Fix it, as if you're a mechanic, and the flavour profile of an entire plantation's yield can be adjusted with a wrench and a good talking to. You nod and gesture toward the table, where today's lineup glistens in their white ceramic prisons. He leans in and slurps a spoonful with exaggerated theatrics, as if showing you how it's really done. He spits with a flourish into the basin. Better, he lies. You know it. He knows you know it. But neither of you says a word. You've learned, quickly, that perfection isn't about taste. It's about conformity. The buyers in London want consistency, a delicate briskness with a clean finish. Nothing too wild or earthy. No surprises. Your tongue's job is to erase the landscape, flatten its stories into something politely exportable. And yet today's batch is difficult. The leaves are from the highlands, near Nuara Elia. Cooler nights and mistier mornings should give them a brighter profile, but something's off, a stringency without character. You think you taste under fermentation, but it might be sunburnt leaf. Historians still argue whether colonial tea standards elevated global taste, or crushed native experimentation. Either way, you're now part of the machine, a reluctant cog with a sore jaw. Remember, the manager says, scribbling something in his ledger, buyers don't care about origin stories. They care about predictability. Then he's gone, leaving a faint trail of bergamot and condescension. You lean on your elbows and squint at the samples. Your eyes are tired, your taste buds desensitized, and your stomach is turning against you. But you keep going. Slurp, swirl, spit. Each spoonful becomes a form of performance. Your face must remain neutral. If you grimace, someone notices. If you smile, someone asks questions. Best to be the blank canvas upon which tea paints its judgment. A junior taster approaches with a clipboard. Sir, a state representative from Candapola waiting outside. Wants feedback on yesterday's grading. Sigh. Candapola's tea has been inconsistent for months. Soil degradation, they whisper, or sabotage. One of their estate managers was bitten by a cobra last week. Accident or revenge? No one's sure. You step outside. The air slaps your face with heat and humidity. The Candapola rep stands by the factory steps, hat in hand, hope in eyes. He's local, early 30s, with a crisp shirt soaked through in the back. Well? He asks. No small talk, no preamble, just centuries of tension packed into a single syllable. You shuffle through your notes. Too thin, you say gently. A bit green, maybe pulled a day too soon. He looks disappointed, but not surprised. Rain came early, hard to judge. You nod. There's a pause. Then he leans in and whispers, next time, try the leaves from the east-facing slope. Older bushes, more character. It's technically against protocol, selective sampling, favouritism, but you tuck the tip away. Everyone's trying to survive this system in their own quiet way. You return to the tasting room, mind already spinning. The manager's still watching. Somewhere a bell clangs to signal the noon break, but there's no break for you. The next batch has just arrived. A boy enters with a tray of fresh samples, each cup filled, steeped and ready. The steam fogs your glasses and the smell. It's richer this time. Earthier. You detect notes of tamarind, even pepper. It's not what the buyers expect, but it's what the land wants to say. You glance around. No one's watching. You take a second sip. Just one. And for a moment, just a breath, you let yourself enjoy it. Fun fact, Colonial tasters were trained to recognise over 200 distinct tea defects, but only a dozen positive flavours. Bitterness was rarely seen as valuable, unless it was the right kind of bitterness. And what exactly is the right kind? No one can agree, so you spit it out, rinse and return to work. You log the batch as acceptable. Not too bitter, not too bold. Safe. Outside, a worker hacks at overgrown hedges with a machete. His face is hidden by a wide straw hat. You'll never know his name, but he's the reason this tea even exists. Your back aches. Your head throbs. You glance at the clock. It's not even lunchtime. You don't remember exactly when your tongue stopped being yours. At first, it was just part of the job, a curiosity, a conversation starter. "Oh, I'm a tea taster," you'd say at parties back in London before the transfer. People would laugh, intrigued, imagining you sipping delicately from porcelain cups in some lush botanical veranda. They never imagined this. Now, in Ceylon, your tongue has become an imperial tool, a thermometer for empire. It doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to Queen and company. Its job is to detect, identify, categorize, and above all, conform. You're not tasting tea, you're tasting risk, profit, failure, uprising, decay. Take the cup in front of you. Batch 72C. A dark amber brew, slightly cloudy. You slurp. The heat stings your lips. You hold the tea on your tongue like a prayer, swirling it around as your mind flicks through the checklist. Briskness, body, brightness, clarity, aroma. Something's wrong. It tastes metallic, like licking a spoon that's been left too long in the rain. A flat, tinny aftertaste that clings to the sides of your tongue. You spit, rinse, try again. Same thing. It could be iron contamination, maybe from old equipment at the estate. Or maybe the leaves were rolled with dirty hands. Or maybe it's nothing. Maybe your tongue is lying to you. Historians still argue whether colonial tasting standards actually improved tea quality, or just imposed British preferences on ancient local practices. Either way, your job is not to question the system. Your job is to detect, define, and report. You mark it, reject. The junior taster beside you flinches. "That's Maturata Estate," he whispers. "Big client, they'll be furious," you shrug. Better furious now than sued later. He nods, but you can see the worry in his eyes. Too many rejections and someone loses their job. Not you, of course, but someone. Your tongue, that poor muscle, continues its marathon. You taste hints of grass, lemon rind, soot, almond, tobacco, river rock, even, on one strange cup, a note that reminds you uncomfortably of boiled socks. You've learned to identify mould within 2 seconds, to differentiate between the brightness of first flush and the dull thud of oversteeping. You've learned that dusty isn't always a defect, and that brisk can sometimes mean harsh. You've also learned to lie. Acceptable, you write next to a brew that tastes like a haunted linen closet. A taster's reputation is built on precision, but also diplomacy. You can't tank an entire region because of a few bad days. Sometimes you let the tea pass. Sometimes you let the empire win. Outside the window the sun has climbed higher, burning away the last of the morning mist. The hills are dry now, the tea leaves curling inward like tired hands. Workers in the fields move slowly, their outlines wavy in the heat. You wonder what they'd say if they saw you now, sitting in a shaded room, sipping and spitting, judging their labour by the curve of a flavour. You push the thought away. One of the quirks of your position is that you have no palate anymore for anything else. A banana tastes like tannin. Bread tastes like paper. You once tried a mango and were convinced it had a touch of kerosene on the finish. It did not. Your doctor warned you last month. The nerves in your tongue are inflamed. Too much hot liquid. Too much acidic rinse. But what's the alternative? You can't not taste. That would be heresy. You'd be shipped back home, labelled compromised. Some tasters crack. They start adding salt to their rinses or chewing cloves between samples. One fellow tried wearing a copper tongue scraper to reset his sense of taste. He lasted a week before quitting. Claimed his dream started tasting like cinnamon. You're still here though, still tasting, still judging, still pretending that your tongue is a miracle and not a mess of nerves and expectations. Your assistant brings you a palate chart. It's absurdly detailed. Columns for aroma, flavour, aftertaste, colour, leaf shape, infusion clarity, mouthfeel. You're meant to fill one out for every batch. You fill out 4, then copy-paste the rest. Another fun tidbit. There's an unspoken rule in the tasting room. If you can't identify at least 3 flavour notes per cup, you're not refined enough for the job, so everyone gets creative. One man once described a tea as having the ghost of walnut. No one questioned him. You take a break. Step outside. The air hits you like soup. A warm, wet fog clings to your skin. Somewhere nearby, a bird cries out in short, panicked bursts. The smell of wet soil is thick enough to taste. You can't tell if it's pleasant anymore. A plantation worker walks by carrying a bundle of harvested leaves. He glances at your white shirt, your clipboard, your soft hands, and says nothing. Just moves on. You feel like a ghost. A strange, pale creature wandering through someone else's home, pressing invisible judgments into the air. You sip from your water bottle and head back inside. There are still 50 cups waiting, and your tongue, abused and ambivalent, presses forward into the bitter unknown. It starts with the metallic clang of the enamel spit bucket being emptied. You don't even flinch anymore. A boy drags it off like it's full of broken tools and not the discarded essence of hundreds of cups. Another is already placing a clean one in its place. Efficient, unacknowledged, and oddly ceremonial. The room smells like wet bark and steam, and your stomach is beginning to regret everything. Again! Because here's the thing. No one tells you about being a professional tea taster. You don't drink tea. You sample it. Violently, loudly, repeatedly. You scoop the liquor into your spoon, suck it in with a dramatic slurp, mouth wide, air rushing over the liquid like a wind tunnel, then immediately spit it out with the finesse of a grumpy fountain statue. Repeat 300 times before lunch. There's no glamour in this job, no curling up with a dainty porcelain cup. Your mouth is a battlefield and the enemy is tannin. Tannin, that wicked little compound that gives tea its structure, its bitterness, and after 150 slurps, a kind of dry-mouthed despair that makes you question your life choices. But you keep going. The next batch is particularly foul. It smells slightly fermented, like rotting hay left too long in the sun. Your spoon hesitates, your nostrils flare, and still you slurp. The moment it hits your tongue, your body revolts. You spit harder than usual, wipe your mouth, rinse, try to forget it. Historians still argue whether these early quality control methods were genuinely effective or simply elaborate theatre to appease investors. But one thing's for sure, a taster's day is as much about endurance as expertise. You're not just tasting tea, you're surviving it. The junior taster beside you stifles a gag. "That one's compost," he mutters. You both chuckle, softly, careful not to let the manager hear. Humour is one of the few things you're allowed to keep. He passes you a small metal tin. "Smell this. It's from a new estate." You crack the lid. The leaves are sharp and twisted, black as charcoal with flecks of silver. You bring it to your nose. There it is again. That tiny, unexpected thrill. A whisper of something interesting. Leather, citrus, a trace of clove. The faint suggestion that this cup might actually have something to say. You measure out the leaves, boiling water, 3 minutes, the familiar rhythm, and then the sip. It's bold, complex, slightly smoky, like a candle blown out too soon. Your tongue tingles. You taste stone fruit, maybe apricot, and a surprising finish of mint. Not minty, mind you, just the memory of mint. "Export it," the manager says suddenly behind you. You didn't hear him enter. You glance up. "You haven't tasted it yet," he shrugs. You smiled, that's enough. There are no secrets in the tasting room. Even joy is monitored. You mark the batch as excellent, bold, uncommon character. It will sell well in Edinburgh, where the air's cold and the palate's forgiving. You wonder if the Scots will taste the apricot. Probably not. Your assistant taps your shoulder. "Spit basin's full again." You nod. Another boy arrives to drag it away. The floor beneath it is slick. You nearly slip as you move to the window for a breath of fresher air. Outside, the field workers are eating lunch under a neem tree. Rice wrapped in banana leaves, pickled lime, maybe lentils if they're lucky. They eat quickly, in silence, crouched low to the ground. You remember your own lunch awaits upstairs. Chicken stew, probably. Heavy on the cloves. Served under the disapproving gaze of Queen Victoria's portrait. You're not hungry. Fun fact, most tea tasters lose weight. It's not the calories. It's the constant adrenaline, the caffeine, the stress, the endless vigilance. You're tasting to detect danger, to prevent disaster, to appease empire. The bitterness gets to you eventually. And not just the bitterness of the tea. You sit back down. The next tray arrives. 40 more cups. You've stopped tasting them as individual brews. Now they're just temperatures and textures. A little acidic, a little dull, oversteeped, under-fermented. Your notes get sloppier. Sharp, drying finish. Slight wood smoke. You write without thinking. Your hand cramps. You flex your fingers and think about switching careers. But what else are you trained to do? What do you even know anymore, beyond tea and spit? Some tasters have managed to escape. There's talk of a man who opened his own blend house in Cape Town, another who joined the circus. Literally. Became a sword swallower, which, honestly, feels like a natural progression. You finish the last cup on the tray, mark it acceptable, slightly aggressive. Then you laugh to yourself. That's how you feel too. Acceptable, slightly aggressive. The clock ticks toward noon. A bell rings in the distance. The factory workers will return to the fields. The pickers will climb into the bushes, their hands moving fast and careful through the leaves. And you? You'll still be here, spoon in hand, tongue numb, back aching. Doing what you always do. Slurp, spit, repeat. You think the mosquitoes here drink tea? Or maybe they've simply acquired a taste for people who spend all day steeped in bergamot and sweat. One of them buzzes past your ear with the arrogance of someone who knows you won't even bother to swat. You're too tired, too caffeinated, too colonial. And the worst part? You can't even complain. Not here. Not in front of the men who pluck leaves barefoot through leech-filled slopes and snake-infested underbrush. Not in front of the women who rise before sunrise, bind their saris and carry woven baskets heavier than your pride. You're not allowed to be miserable in luxury, because your luxury, such as it is, sits awkwardly on a pyramid of human lives. You head out into the sun, clipboard in hand, pretending to inspect field consistency. It's a lie, of course. What you're really doing is catching your breath before the afternoon round of tasting. The path cuts through rows of Camellia sinensis like a green labyrinth. Neatly trimmed bushes, waist-high, stretching across the hills in every direction. A triumph of landscaping, a cathedral of leaves. It takes a moment before you notice them. The pickers, bent over, silent. Dozens of them, moving as one. Fingers working fast, twisting and snapping 2 leaves and a bud with impossible precision. It's hypnotic. It's choreography. It's exploitation. You nod as you pass. Some nod back. Most don't look up. A few are children. That one can't be older than 10. His fingertips are green-stained, and his expression doesn't match his age. Historians still argue whether child labour in tea plantations was a desperate economic necessity or a deliberate system of generational control. You suspect both are true. The sun beats down. Your shirt sticks to your back. You stumble slightly, your boot catching on an exposed root. A nearby worker smirks, just a little. It's the closest thing to conversation you've had all morning. At the far edge of the field, under the shade of a tamarind tree, you find a foreman smoking a rolled leaf cigarette. His eyes are red, not from emotion, just too much smoke and too little sleep. Bad batch this morning, you tell him. He shrugs. Rain came early, some leaves fermented in the basket. You both know what that means. Fungus. It won't kill the tea, just the reputation. You scribble a note. Keep today's pluck separate, you suggest. He nods, but doesn't write anything. You're not sure he'll remember, or care. You head back toward the factory. The pickers watch you go. Not with hatred, not with awe. Just that same quiet tolerance they give the heat, and the leeches, and the centuries. Back in the tasting room, the manager has removed his jacket and is sipping cold tonic. Quinine for the mosquitoes, or so the legend goes. You've seen the new numbers? He asks, not looking up. No, you reply. China's flooding the market with cheaper black tea. If we don't tighten quality, we lose London. There it is again, that pressure. The idea that your tongue, your judgment, is all that stands between the empire and economic chaos. Never mind that the real work is done by those children in the fields, or the women drying leaves in 100-degree heat. He tosses you a memo. New grading standard coming down next month. More detailed aroma profiles, fewer accepted defects, and we're adding acidity scales. You stare at him. We're not wine, he shrugs. London wants acidity, so we give them acidity. You want to scream, but you don't. You sit back down, dip your spoon, and prepare for round 2. Slurp. This batch is woody, faint tobacco, almost like dried orange peel if it had regrets. You mark it interesting, which in tasting parlance is one step above undrinkable. The junior taster is muttering under his breath, trying to remember if malty is a compliment or an insult. It depends, on region, on buyer. On moon phase, probably. Fun fact. In official British tea grading, there are designations like OP, Orange Pico, BOP, broken orange pekoe, and even TG fop, tippy golden flowery orange pekoe. You don't make the names. You just translate them into something a buyer can digest with scones. Outside, thunder rumbles. A monsoon threatens to break early. The workers are rushing now, trying to pluck the last usable leaves before the rain ruins them. Wet leaves mean mould. Mould means shipment delay. Shipment delay means lost contracts. The whole empire turns on timing and tannins. You glance again at the boy in the field, still working, still silent. Your hand shakes slightly as you lift the next spoon. Is it the caffeine, the heat, or the quiet knowledge that no matter how perfect this tea is, it won't change anything? Slurp, spit. The taste is fine. Everything else isn't. You can tell how long someone's worked on a tea plantation by their hands. The newer ones have finger pads intact, nails uncracked, skin still pale. But the veterans, especially the women, have thumbs stained a permanent green. Their nails are worn into strange little slopes from constant plucking. Tea doesn't just stain fabric, it stains people. And while you may sit in a clean room with a brass nameplate on your desk, you're stained too. Just not where anyone can see. It's just past 2 in the afternoon. The air inside the factory is thick with evaporating water and the sighs of tired men. You've finished another tasting session, and for once you escape. You duck out the back and wander to the shade of the packing house. Here, huge piles of withered leaves await rolling. The air smells oddly sweet, like overripe apples and wet straw. Nearby, a small group of workers chat in rapid Tamil, their laughter soft, private. One of them glances at you and the laughter stops. That happens a lot. You pretend not to notice. Instead, you focus on the machinery. Enormous iron rollers, conveyor belts, drying drums, imported from Manchester, installed with great ceremony, now partially rusted and held together by grease, prayers and unpaid overtime. You slip inside the leaf sorting room. It's dim, quieter than the tasting chamber, and the light through the wooden slats paints the floor with golden stripes. A rhythmic clatter fills the air as leaf fragments slide down grates, sorted by size and density. One of the older workers nods at you. You nod back. No one speaks. This room has a rhythm, and it's not yours. The smell is powerful, earthy and slightly floral. You breathe through your mouth, trying to identify it. Bergamot? No, something softer. Jasmine? You ask the foreman. He chuckles. Sweat, he says. That's what you're smelling. It's in the leaves, as and the rains. You laugh politely, but your stomach clenches. Because he's right. You'll taste that sweat in tomorrow's batch. It'll curl around the edges of the flavour profile, and London will call it complex. Historians still argue whether the romanticisation of colonial tea, from charming drawing rooms to Ceylon's gentle hills, was ignorance or marketing. You suspect it was both. You slip outside again, walking past rows of drying racks covered in freshly rolled leaves. The sun hits them hard, baking them crisp. The smell is sharper here, more alive. Somewhere a breeze catches a loose leaf and sends it fluttering like a moth. A woman nearby is spreading leaves with practiced precision. You watch her hands move, quick, efficient, ruthless in their grace. She looks up and sees you staring. Doesn't stop. Just raises one eyebrow in silent challenge. You look away. The drying racks stretch like a maze. You wander through them, watching the light shift across the piles. These are the leaves you'll taste tomorrow. Still green in places, not yet oxidized. Still too full of the world. You think of the manager's words, buyers want predictability. But how can you predict a leaf's mood? The sun's stubbornness? The way a worker's hands shake on a bad day? Tea doesn't care about empires. It absorbs everything. Air, heat, tension. Taste it carefully enough, and you can read history in its bitterness. A whistle blows in the distance. Shift change. Workers file past you like a quiet river. Some glance at you. Most don't. They're going home, to tin-roofed huts and bowls of rice. Maybe a stolen moment of laughter before tomorrow's cycle begins. You, however, are heading to the manager's bungalow, not for tea, for a meeting. The path up is lined with hibiscus bushes. Red, ridiculous blooms like open mouths. You trudge past them, ignoring the squelch of mud beneath your boots. Inside the bungalow, it's cooler. Ceiling fans churn slowly. A phonograph clicks on in the corner, playing some tinny British march that tries too hard to be cheerful. The manager gestures toward a chair. We've got a shipment for London sailing Friday. The buyers want this week's tasting logs in advance, including yours. You nod, pulling a sheaf of papers from your satchel. He doesn't even glance at them. Just sips his drink and stares out the window. You know, he says, the thing about bitterness, it sells better when it's dressed up as elegance. You don't respond. There's nothing to say. He finally looks at you. You've got a good palate. Rare. Don't waste it worrying about politics. Just do your job. You take your papers and stand. Outside, the air is thick again. Dusk is coming, slow and golden. Somewhere on the hill, a child laughs. The sound travels strangely in the tea-scented air. You breathe it in. The bitterness, the beauty, the rot. All of it. Rain in Ceylon isn't polite. It doesn't drift gently from the sky like in England, or whisper down like a curtain. No, here, it crashes. With force, with drama. Like the sky has decided it's had quite enough of holding itself together and simply lets go. You hear it coming long before it hits. A distant roar across the hills. Trees ripple. Birds vanish. Workers shout, rushing to cover the drying racks, grabbing at burlap sheets, flapping and stumbling through red mud. You drop your clipboard and sprint to help. You may wear clean clothes and read Kipling in the evenings, but you're not heartless. At least, not entirely. Leaves are swept up in a frenzy. Rain begins hammering the tin roof above you as you and a boy wrestle to drag the last full rack into the covered shed. He's maybe 15, skinny as a pole, but his grip is vice-like. The two of you don't speak. No need. You're both soaked within seconds. Inside the shed, you catch your breath. Water drips from your sleeves. The boy grins. You grin back. Then you look down. Half the leaves on the last rack are already soaked. Ruined. This batch, scheduled for tomorrow's tasting, might be compromised beyond recovery. You're supposed to be calm about these things. Analytical. Clinical. But something about the waste, the suddenness of it all, makes your stomach twist. Because you already know what this means. A full shipment might now taste off. Buyers will complain. The estate will lose its bonus. Someone, many someones, will get less rice this month. You step back out into the rain. The courtyard is a brown lake. Thunder echoes like cannon fire across the hills. The palm trees bend like they're praying. You trudge through the soup of earth and run off, heading back toward the factory. Your boots squelch. Rain pours down your collar. You taste the iron in the storm. Historians still argue whether the colonial tea trade was an economic miracle or a disaster of ecological manipulation. But you know this much. Tea doesn't care. It's a plant. It obeys water and sun, not markets, and nature is not on schedule. Inside the factory, the air is cooler but smells like wet rope. Your manager stands at the doorway, scowling like a disappointed headmaster. East Slope leaves are ruined, he says. You'll have to reclassify them tomorrow. Reclassify. A polite way of saying, pretend they're not ruined. You wipe your face. They'll taste like mildew, he shrugs. Then use a better metaphor. You want to scream. Instead, you nod. In the tasting room, you sit beside a tray of leaves that, just yesterday, smelled bright and citrusy. Now they smell like wet laundry and regret. You try to focus. You steep. You slurp. It's all wrong. Flat. Musty. Bitter in a way that clings to your back teeth. And yet, you consider marking it salvageable. You hesitate, pen in midair. This is the moment every time. The quiet, private moment when you decide whether to speak the truth or sell the story, whether to call it slightly earthy or admit it's unfit for anything but compost. Your assistant glances at your silence. Problem? You shake your head. Just deciding what kind of liar I want to be today. He doesn't laugh. He knows it's not a joke. You glance again at the cup. One more slurp. One more chance. There's something under the mould. A ghost of the leaf's original self. A sharpness. A flicker of floral. Maybe it can be saved. Maybe that's enough. You write acceptable. Bold. Slightly rustic. Not quite a lie. Not quite the truth. Fun fact. Some tasters develop phantom flavours after prolonged exposure. Tasting notes that aren't really there but emerge from memory or hope or despair. You're beginning to wonder if that's happening now. The rain finally slows. You step outside again. The fields are a mess. The air smells like wet bark and mud and something faintly sweet. Maybe crushed hibiscus or overripe jackfruit from the orchard down the hill. Insects buzz louder now. Freed from the storm, You hear laughter again, workers joking as they wring out their clothes. You wonder how they keep their humour. You've lost yours somewhere between cup 113 and 167. The sun is trying to break through, slicing gold light between fast-moving clouds. Steam begins to rise from the soil like ghosts taking a final bow. And you? You taste that moment too. It's in the air, in your skin. Tomorrow someone in London will sip a delicate cup of Ceylon black and call it pleasantly brisk. They'll never know it came from a soaked hill, a ruined rack, a desperate decision made in the middle of a thunderstorm. They'll never know the boy with green hands who dragged leaves through mud to save a batch. They'll never taste the rain. But you do, and it stays with you. Your shirt is still damp from the storm when you step into the market that evening, but no one here seems to care. It's a different world entirely. No brass buttons, no whitewashed offices, no rows of ceramic cups. Just stalls of fruit, spices, tools, textiles, and the kind of noise that feels alive rather than oppressive. The market near Candy is a controlled chaos of colour and scent. Clusters of turmeric root and peppercorn spill from woven baskets. Women in bright headscarves laugh too loudly. A man squats beside a stack of cinnamon sticks taller than he is, slicing off thin curls with a knife so old it's probably seen 2 empires. You came here on a side errand, technically, a request from the manager to source a fresh tin of cardamom for the governor's wife, which is, of course, beneath you. But the truth is, you're here because you needed to remember that taste can still be joyful. You pass a vendor selling sweet milk tea in tin cups, thick, sugary, nothing like the tastings you do daily. You pause. He catches your eye and grins. "Taster?" he asks. You nod, surprised. He pours a cup anyway. "No spit bucket here," he jokes. You laugh. "Take it and drink. It's glorious." Wrong, by professional standards. Oversteeped, clove-heavy, astringent. But it tastes like warmth, like someone made it for themselves and decided to share. You nod again and pay him a coin. He gives you a piece of jaggery in return. Dark, crumbling sugar made from palm sap. You chew it slowly, letting it melt into the corners of your mouth, hiding bitterness in molasses. And for a moment, you don't hate tea. Further into the market, you find the spice trader you're supposed to meet. She's older, her hands calloused, her sari neatly tucked despite the heat. Her booth smells like everything at once: cardamom, coriander, ginger, lime, tamarind. "You're the one with the tongue," she says, squinting. "Among other things," you reply. She smiles, not unkindly. "Then taste this." She offers a pinch of powdered spice in a leaf. You dip your finger, place it on your tongue. It explodes. Sweet, peppery, then strangely cool. It's not just cardamom. There's something else. Clove? A twist of fenugreek? "Local blend," she says. "Only we make it. Family secret." You nod slowly, savouring it. Too complex for London. She laughs, and it's the sound of someone who's been underestimated her entire life and no longer cares. Then don't tell them. You purchase a tin, ostensibly for the governor's wife, but you'll keep it in your quarters and smell it when the bitterness becomes too much. As you wrap the tin in cloth and turn to leave, she stops you. "Tasting's not a skill," she says. "It's a memory. Everything you are is in your mouth." You nod, unsure if you understand, but unwilling to question it. Historians still argue whether colonial markets like these were hubs of cultural exchange or just sanitized zones of economic extraction. You feel it's both. But you also feel this: your tongue tingling from spice, your hands sticky from jaggery, your eyes adjusting to a different kind of truth. You pass a butcher's stall, goat meat, tripe, something unidentifiable and gleaming. You try not to inhale too deeply. A child bumps into you, then disappears into the crowd. A hand darts into your pocket. Gone again. But it's empty, save for a tasting spoon and a used notepad. Nothing worth stealing, just your own accumulated boredom. As the sun lowers, the market changes colour. Shadows stretch. The vendors grow quieter. Lanterns flicker to life. The crowd softens, becomes dreamlike. You walk slower. The air smells like cloves and sweat and fruit peels. And beneath it all, tea. Always, always tea. Even here, surrounded by spices and incense, your mind still reaches for tannins and astringency, body and briskness. You can't turn it off. Your tongue has been trained into servitude. You catch your reflection in a polished copper tray. Your collar crooked, Hair damp, eyes sunken. You don't look like a man in control of his palate. You look like someone trying to remember why it mattered. Back on the road to the plantation, you ride in the back of a supply cart. The stars are just starting to blink through the haze. The wheels creak over ruts in the dirt. Crickets are deafening. You clutch your cloth-wrapped tin and feel briefly that you've stolen something more than spice tonight. Something small. Something human. The lab smells like wet copper and boiled leaves. It always does. Not in the comforting way a kitchen smells after brewing tea, but in the sterile, slightly sour way you might expect from a place where leaves go to be dissected. You're back from the market now, back from that fleeting moment of connection, and already the air feels different, stiff, unforgiving. Here, in this sealed-off corner of the factory, tasting becomes science. Precision scales, thermometers, strange glass tubes bubbling ominously. And in the centre of it all, you, clipboard in hand, tongue already dry in anticipation. This part of your job isn't romantic, it's forensic. You're not just tasting for flavour anymore, you're testing for failure. Today, there's a rumour. A batch from the East Slope may have been exposed to chemical runoff. No one will say it directly, but the whisper of pesticide hangs in the air like a curtain no one wants to lift. The lab assistant, a quiet man with meticulous fingernails, prepares the sample. You watch as he measures exactly 2.5 grams of suspect tea into a sterile pot. Distilled water, 3-minute brew, nothing less, nothing more. You already know how this one will taste. Wrong, just wrong. And yet, you still have to sip it. You slurp, hold, swish. And then, there it is. That flicker of something chemical. Not strong, not acrid, just faint, subtle. Like licking the inside of a copper pipe and wondering if it's your imagination. You try again. Still there. Historians still argue whether early pesticide use in colonial agriculture was driven by ignorance or desperation. But inside your mouth, the answer is clear. It was arrogance. You mark the sample. Possible contamination. Secondary testing required. You want to add taste like a rusty cough, but you refrain. The manager doesn't appreciate poetic diagnostics. You rinse, but it lingers. That phantom metallic film that no amount of water can scrape off your tongue. It lives in your molars now. The next sample is from a different estate, far from the valley. Higher elevation, supposedly safer. You taste. It's better. Floral. Faint notes of honey and bark. But even here, the aftertaste is suspicious. Not chemical. Just tired. Like the leaves were trying, but gave up halfway through. You write fatigued. The lab assistant raises an eyebrow, then shrugs. You're allowed one creative descriptor per afternoon. It's in the unspoken rulebook. You move on to the pH testing station. Litmus strips, colour charts. The tea reveals its secrets in swirls of soft pink or hard yellow. You record the acidity, the moisture content, the residual oxidation levels. None of this makes the tea taste better, but it does make the Empire feel smarter. A taster's job, after all, is partly illusion. The illusion of control, of mastery over something inherently organic and chaotic. You remember a letter from a buyer in London that described your last batch as having the dignified sharpness of a late September wind. You had marked it slightly mouldy. Maybe your tongue isn't the problem, maybe theirs is. There's a third sample waiting. It's darker than usual. The assistant hesitates. From the edge of the forest, he murmurs. You know the place. The land is rich, but the estate is poorly managed. The owner's rarely on site, and the workers are underpaid and overarmed with superstition. You taste the brew, and something cold curls in your gut. It's wrong. Not spoiled, not tainted, just wrong. The flavour is too smooth, too quiet, like a silence you didn't trust, like something was erased. The tea has no story. You glance at the assistant. Is this decaffeinated? He shakes his head. No. You frown. It feels off, like a body without a pulse. You spit, rinse, and sip again. Still nothing. You write, dead. The assistant doesn't question it this time. Fun fact, some teas are grown in soil that's been over-farmed, drained of nutrients. The leaves grow, but the flavour vanishes. Kind of botanical ghosting. You've started to recognise the taste of ghosts. As the lab work wraps up, the assistant clears the table. You sit back and stare at the ceiling fan slowly turning above. It creaks in an uneven rhythm, like a ticking clock that's forgotten how time works. You think of the woman in the spice market. Everything you are is in your mouth. If that's true, what does it say that you can no longer taste joy without questioning it? You pack your notes, stack your cups, and leave the lab. The door closes behind you with a whisper of steam and science. Outside, the sun has gone down. The factory is mostly quiet now, save for the drying room where 2 workers still adjust burlap over leaf trays. You walk past them silently, the metallic aftertaste of suspicion still coating the back of your throat. Tomorrow, these leaves will become someone's morning ritual, their comfort, their calm. They'll never know what you found in the lab, but you'll remember, and it will follow you. The dining room in the plantation bungalow is trying very hard to forget where it is. Heavy curtains block the view of the jungle. An oil painting of Queen Victoria stares down from the far wall, her expression unreadable, somewhere between indigestion and imperial satisfaction. The table is long and unnecessarily formal, linen cloth, polished silver, stiff back chairs that squeak if you dare to lean. You're seated at your usual spot, third from the head, where the ceiling fan's breeze almost reaches but never quite delivers. The manager sits at the end, carving through a piece of boiled chicken with theatrical authority. No one speaks unless spoken to. Lunch is always some variation of colonial fusion. Today, it's lentils over rice, a hard roll, a slab of boiled yam, and an unripe banana for dessert. The cook's from Jaffna, and if you were honest, you'd say the food used to have soul, before they made her reduce the spice level to suitable for European digestion. You chew slowly, the lentils are dry. You want to say they taste like pencil shavings and regret. You don't. Instead, you say nothing. Because just outside the windows, Tamil labourers pass by on their way back from the noon break. You see them through slatted blinds, some barefoot, some limping slightly, all hunched under the invisible weight of history. They are given rice and a splash of curry in coconut leaf bowls. They are not allowed near the bungalow. One of them looks up and meets your eyes, only for a second. Then she's gone. You swallow a mouthful of dry yam and suddenly can't tell if it's the food or the guilt sticking in your throat. The manager sets down his fork with a clink. Matarata Estates' shipment was accepted, he announces, dabbing at his chin. Your grading helped save the deal. You don't respond. It wasn't the truth you wrote, and it wasn't your tongue that made the difference. It was your ability to word a lie beautifully. Historians still argue whether colonial food customs helped create a sense of shared identity among administrators, or simply reinforced the wall between them and everyone else. You suspect it's the latter, especially when the cook isn't allowed to eat the food she prepares. Dessert arrives, rice pudding with cardamom. You lift a spoonful and pause. It smells like the spice traders blend. The good kind. It hits your tongue with a strange jolt of something honest. The manager raises an eyebrow. Something wrong? You smile faintly. No, just unusual, he grunts. We had to make a few cuts. The Jaffna woman's daughter was caught stealing ginger, sent them both off the estate. The spoon pauses halfway back to the plate. You want to ask why. You want to say it's just ginger. You don't. Instead, you set the spoon down. After lunch, you linger near the veranda. The wood is warm under your palms. The jungle hums all around, dense and living. Cicadas scream somewhere in the trees. A gecko flickers across the banister. And somewhere, faintly, you hear drums. You're not supposed to hear drums. Ceremonial rhythms drift from the valley on certain afternoons, especially before the full moon. The local workers say it's for protection, or maybe for blessing. You were warned during your first week not to entertain superstitions. But the sound wraps around you now, deep, earthy, rhythmic. You close your eyes. It tastes like rain-soaked earth, like ripe jackfruit, like danger. Back in the factory, your next session is waiting. A full table of afternoon samples. You trudge there slowly, legs leaden with food and thought. Inside the tasting room, your assistant has set out the cups. The steam rises in orderly spirals. The white ceramics look smug in the amber light. You pick up your spoon, heavy again. Slurp, spit, slurp, spit. By cup 12, your mouth is a battlefield. You taste chalk, over-roasted leaf, a hint of sandalwood, which shouldn't be there at all. You raise your hand. This one, you say. Tampered. The assistant frowns. How can you tell? It's smoky, but the leaves aren't from a smoky region. Someone's cheated the drying process. He nods, impressed. You mark it rejected. Artificial drying suspected. Fun fact, some estate managers, desperate to meet quotas during wet seasons, use low fires or even coals to finish drying leaves. It's illegal. It's also incredibly common. You taste 3 more. 1's palatable. 2 are disasters. As you rinse your mouth again, your eyes drift to the window. The sky's darkening, clouds returning. You glance down at your notes, then stop. In the corner of your tasting log, someone has drawn a small figure. A woman with long hair and a basket on her back, walking between tea bushes. Your assistant shrugs. Found an old notebook, thought it was yours. It's not. You flip through it, and the margins are full of little sketches. Trees, monkeys, hills, rain, and faces. So many faces. Real ones. Laughing. Crying. Living. Someone once sat at this table and tasted tea, yes. But they also saw what surrounded it. And maybe they left before it swallowed them. You close the book slowly. The drums have stopped. The wind is picking up again. The light is shifting. And you still have 38 cups left. There's a particular kind of silence that follows a disciplinary meeting on a tea estate. It isn't loud. It isn't filled with anger or shouting. It's the kind of silence that hums beneath conversation, that moves through hallways like fog. It doesn't announce itself. It just settles. You feel it the moment you enter the office, after tasting batch Nuggis 67. The manager is seated behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, fingers tented like some minor deity of administration. A plantation book lies open in front of him, but he isn't reading. You glance across the room and see another taster, Anil, standing stiff-backed, staring straight ahead. His mouth is tight. His logbook is on the desk, pages open, underlined in red. This is the 3rd time, the manager says without looking at you. 3 batches graded below market expectation. You know what that means. Anil told the truth. Again. He tasted the leaf, found it dull, uneven, possibly infested, and wrote exactly that. Not diplomatically, not gently, not with the soft euphemisms of empire, just honestly. This is a business, the manager continues, voice still maddeningly calm. Not a laboratory. Our buyers rely on stability. You want to say something. That truth matters. That Anil's palate is among the sharpest you've known. That if the leaf is bad, no amount of phrasing will fix the shipment when it lands in Liverpool. But you stay silent. Anil is dismissed with a quiet nod. He exits without protest. Later, you find him sitting by the packing shed, smoking a rolled cigarette, looking not angry but deflated. You sit beside him. No words. Just shared silence. The kind that's heavier than speech. Finally he says, "What's the point of having a tongue if you're not allowed to use it?" You wish you had an answer, but all you can think of is your own logbook, filled with gentle lies. Historians still argue whether quality control on colonial plantations served the consumer, or simply protected capital. In practice, they did both. But they crushed a few pallets along the way. You go back inside, and the silence follows. The rest of the afternoon passes in sips and spitting. The manager's warning hovers in the back of your throat. You start second-guessing yourself. Is that bitterness real? Is that mustiness intentional? What would happen if you marked it honestly? You write subtle instead of weak. You write earth forward instead of mild rot. And in one particularly tired cup you simply write neutral. That one word carries the weight of your guilt. Your assistant hands you a form to sign. New grading sheets, allegedly streamlined. More check boxes. Less space for description. You notice that the word bitter has been replaced with bold. You smirk, but you sign anyway. Outside, the light is shifting. The sun has reached that late afternoon angle where every leaf looks golden from one side and black from the other. The hills roll like an oil painting, dappled in shadow and late light. You step out for air and find the boy from the field again, the one with the green fingers. He's crouched near the path, washing his hands in a shallow basin. The water runs brown, then clear. He looks up, sees you, and offers the smallest nod. You return it, and then, impulsively, you ask, "Do you like tea?" He considers this, then shrugs. "My mother does," he says. "She says some cups are sad." You blink. Sad how? Like, the leaves wanted to be something else. You have no idea what to do with that, but it stays with you. Back in your room, you stare at the ceiling, letting the fan rattle above you. You open your tasting notes, flip back through old pages. You find entries from your first week, so meticulous, so detailed. Descriptors like sun-touched and brisk with coppery edge. You remember how hard you tried to impress the older tasters, how you'd study flavour wheels late at night. Now the notes are shorter, colder, professional. You miss your own tongue. Fun fact, some of the earliest Ceylon tasters weren't trained, they were recruited from soldiers and clerks. The thinking was that good discipline mattered more than a good palate. The results were variable. You write in the margin of your book, some cups are sad. No one will see it, but you'll know it's there. That evening the sky turns the colour of oversteeped tea. You can hear singing from the workers' quarters, low, slow, harmonised, a song older than empire, probably older than tea itself. You lean on the balcony and listen. You close your eyes, try to taste the day. It's complex and slightly bitter. The monkey arrives just as you're trying to salvage a ruined blend. It starts with a thump on the tin roof. Nothing unusual. Then a scampering, a crash, and suddenly there's chaos in the sorting room. "Monkey!" someone yells, though by now it's obvious. A flash of brown fur streaks across the rafters. Screams follow. One of the workers drops an entire tray of sorted leaf, sending black curls scattering like spilled ink across the floor. And there it is, squatting triumphantly on top of a sorting table, holding an empty teacup like it's mocking your entire profession. You stare. The monkey stares back, and then it drinks. Or rather, it pretends to. Tilts the cup dramatically, spills half of it onto its chest, bares its teeth in delight, then flings the cup directly at the wall. Your manager, already fuming from the morning's buyer telegrams, storms in like a Colonial thundercloud. Get it out. Workers rush around with brooms and baskets, trying to chase the creature without causing further destruction. You, meanwhile, are frozen mid-evaluation, spoon halfway to your mouth, as the monkey takes one final lap across the rafters and vanishes through an open window with a triumphant squeal. "Back to work," the manager growls. But how? The floor's a mess. The trays are contaminated, the tea is ruined, and now your nose is full of monkey sweat. You try anyway. The next batch, despite everything, is oddly perfect. Clean liquor, bright hue, balanced body, a faint top note of citrus. You sip, surprised, then smile, until you remember, this one's for the London buyers directly. High-end blend. Your notes have to match expectation, not truth. You hesitate, because the real problem isn't the monkey, it's the market. You're supposed to predict how this tea will sell, not how it tastes. That's the real game. The slurps and the spitting, the notes and logs, they're props. The real tasting happens in distant drawing rooms, where people describe your work in metaphors they don't understand. You mark it refined, aromatic, hints of spring lime. Lime. Why not? You're already pretending this wasn't steeped next to a wild animal. Your assistant approaches with a fresh sheet of paper, the shipment summary for London. You're expected to comment on the season's flavour profile as a whole. You glance at your logbook. It's filled with contradictions, compromises, careful adjectives. You write, "This season's character is defined by a confident bitterness, softened by weather and tempered by labour." The manager later crosses out bitterness and writes depth. Of course he does. Historians still argue whether flavour language in colonial documents was a tool of trade or propaganda. But to you, the semantics are a leash, tightening every time your pen touches the page. Later that day, you find a group of workers gathered at the edge of the forest near the packing shed. You walk over out of curiosity and see them laughing, really laughing, at a younger boy mimicking the monkey's movements with surprising accuracy. He jumps on a sack, flings a twig, drinks an imaginary cup of tea, then throws it to the ground with perfect theatrical flair. Even you laugh. It's too good. A woman turns to you. "That monkey comes every few weeks. Likes the smell." You nod. "I don't blame him." Someone offers you jackfruit. Sticky, sweet, and warm. You chew slowly, letting the sugar wrap around your molars, bearing the tannins of the day. No one speaks English here, and for once, you're grateful. The boy does another round of monkey impersonations. This time he adds a posh accent, pretending to scold imaginary workers while sipping from a leaf. You raise your hand in surrender. All right. You win. He grins and bows deeply, and just like that, the tension that's built all day, Anil's silence, the falsified logs, the looming shipment, dissolves for a moment into something human. You return to the factory before sunset, and the scent of dried tea hits you like a memory. You pause beside the racks. Some of the leaves are still damp from yesterday's storm, and you touch them gently. Cool to the skin. Fragile. You wonder how many leaves you've tasted. Thousands? Tens of thousands? Each one picked by a hand you've never shaken. Each one judged in a room they'll never enter. You want to believe your notes matter, but mostly you hope you're not turning their work into just another bland brew labelled acceptable. Back in your quarters, you jot in your notebook, "Today's best batch was tasted with monkey breath in the air and jackfruit on my teeth. Still better than London." You close the book. Tomorrow will be another storm, another lie, another slurp, another spoiled rack. But tonight you let yourself believe it mattered. Your teeth are starting to ache. Not just the kind of dull throb that comes from jaw tension or too much tea. This is different, deeper. Like something inside the enamel is quietly collapsing, surrendering to years of slurping, swishing and spitting. You run your tongue across the top row, grimacing. The edges feel sharp, as if the enamel's been filed by 1,000 tiny invisible sandstorms. The tannins have eaten through the surface, the constant contact with acidic brews leaving their mark. It's no surprise. A seasoned tea taster's mouth is a battlefield, and your gums are losing. You head to the plantation's clinic. It's a single-room building with peeling green paint and a permanent smell of eucalyptus oil and disinfectant. The doctor is an Anglo-Indian woman named Dr. Mariam, brisk, blunt, and always exactly 3 sentences away from calling you a fool. She shines a small mirror light into your mouth and grunts. "Your teeth are eroding," you nod. "And your gums are inflamed." You nod again. "You're still not using the enamel trays, are you?" You sigh. "They interfere with the slurp." She leans back, arms crossed. "So does early tooth death." She prescribes a chalky rinse that tastes like mint and chalkboard and hands you a metal dental shield. Wear it between sessions, or don't. You're not the first taster to ignore advice and end up gumming his way through a curry by 40. You thank her and leave, holding the tray like it's some kind of punishment. Back in the tasting room, you try it out. The shield fits awkwardly, feels like a coin stuck to the roof of your mouth. It muffles the air intake and alters the slurp. You make it through 6 cups before spitting the thing into the bin and going back to bare teeth. Maybe you'll regret it, but maybe the tea deserves to meet you as you are, unprotected, tender, vulnerable. The assistant brings in a new batch of estate samples. You nod, reach for your spoon, then pause. "This is the lot from Hillcrest," he says, "the one with the new fermenting trays." You remember. They were experimenting with a slower drying process, trying to replicate Chinese oolong techniques using Ceylon leaf. It was considered a waste of time, but you were curious. You taste, and it's unlike anything else today. Warm, deep. The edge of bitterness softened, stretched. There's a roundness to it, a kind of patience that most black teas don't bother with. You think you taste sandalwood, maybe fig. You sip again, forgetting to spit. It blooms. You close your eyes. This is what tea is supposed to feel like. You mark it experimental, promising. Don't ruin this. The manager enters just as you're finishing the note. "Still burning your taste buds?" he asks, amused. You flash a polite smile, hiding your sore jaw. Trying something new. He picks up the cup, sniffs, and immediately frowns. "Too soft. Won't survive the shipping." "It might if we vacuum seal," he raises an eyebrow. "You want to ship this as a premium batch?" You nod. He scoffs. "Too risky. Buyers like tradition. Not tea that tastes like incense and nostalgia." Historians still argue whether innovation was ever welcome in colonial agriculture, or whether everything new was simply made to mimic an older European model. You don't need a debate. You have a spoon. The manager orders the blend downgraded. Mix it with a stronger Assam base. Beef it up. Make it taste like something we already sell. You say nothing, but you leave your original note in the logbook anyway. Later, in your quarters, you examine your teeth in the cracked mirror. One molar is greying, another is chipped at the edge. You press against your jaw, tender. You chew only on one side now without realizing. Your body is becoming the record of your profession. Fun fact, some tasters eventually develop tea tongue, a condition where their taste buds dull permanently, their palate flattened by years of chemical exposure. It's joked about like an industry badge of honour. But the joke ends with soup dinners. You sit by the window and sip warm water. Nothing steeped, just hot, tasteless water. Your mouth rests, but your mind won't. You think of that Hillcrest batch, how it felt like the past and the future in the same sip. You think of Dr. Mariam's voice. You're not the first taster to ignore advice. And you think of your first cup of tea, real tea, made by your grandmother in a tiny kettle, poured into a chipped porcelain cup with a sprig of mint and a touch of sugar. You were 10. You thought it tasted like magic. Now everything tastes like obligation, except that one cup today. Maybe you'll visit the Hillcrest estate, see the fermenting trays, ask questions. Maybe you'll fight for that blend. Or maybe you'll wake up tomorrow and taste another 300 cups and mark them all acceptable, and let your teeth rot in peace. But not tonight. Tonight you remember that even bitterness can have depth, and sometimes it's worth tasting the whole thing. You meet the old man near the edge of the fields, where the bushes grow unruly and the paths start to dissolve into forest. He's sitting beneath a jackfruit tree, legs crossed, hands resting on a lap that seems too still to belong to someone living. His face is a map, creased, dark, unreadable. A few broken teeth remain, and what's left of his hair is tucked neatly under a white cloth wrap. You didn't plan to meet him. You were looking for the Hillcrest foreman, hoping to ask about their experimental fermenting trays. But the foreman's not around, and someone casually gestures toward the one who used to taste before the British brought spoons. So here you are. He eyes you carefully. Not suspicious, just deeply amused that someone like you is now standing in front of someone like him. "You're the one with the spoon," he says in perfect English, his voice as dry as the leaves scattered around him. You nod, feeling suddenly young. "They gave me a spoon too," he adds, "but only after they took away my fingers." You pause. "From tasting?" He laughs, a rasping, dusty sound. "From plucking. Too slow, too old. So I learned to taste. No salary, just respect." You sit carefully, unsure if this counts as trespassing or tribute. "I've been told bitterness is a flaw," you begin. He waves a hand. "Bitterness is truth. Only people afraid of truth want everything sweet." You nod, feeling the words burrow somewhere beneath your ribs. "You still taste every day?" he asks. "Too much," you answer. "Some days I can't tell if I'm tasting tea or just myself." He chuckles. "Same thing, some would say." He picks a single green leaf from the nearby bush, crushes it between his fingers and holds it to your nose. The scent is sharp, raw, not yet fermented into anything drinkable, just the pure beginning of bitterness. "You know the first tea I ever tasted?" he asks. "It was boiled with ginger and bark, no sugar, tasted like someone shouting in your mouth." You grin. "Did you like it?" "Didn't have to. It wasn't trying to please me. It was telling me something." Historians still argue whether pre-colonial tea consumption in South Asia was a ritual, a medicine, or a flavour experiment. The truth is, it was probably all three. And for this man, it never needed British approval to matter. He gestures for your spoon. You hesitate, then hand it over. He studies it, weighs it like it's something sacred. "Too smooth," he mutters. The mouth forgets when the tool is too kind. Then he hands it back. "You write?" he asks. "Tasting logs." "Logs are good, but don't forget stories. Bitterness needs a story, or it becomes just poison." You nod, unsure how to write that into a flavour profile. As you rise to leave, he points toward the trail. You keep tasting, but don't forget to feel it. That's what makes the difference. You walk back slowly, the forest on either side whispering old things you'll never quite understand. In the factory, you return to your table. A new tray of samples has been prepared. No one questions your absence. They never do. As long as the notes get written and the cups get logged, you could disappear for hours and still be a hero on paper. You slurp the next cup. It's a disaster. Over-oxidized, sour, dry as old paper. And yet, something flickers in the finish. A shadow of something else. Something once alive. You write. Unstable. Bitter. But trying to say something. Your assistant reads over your shoulder and frowns. "That's not a flavour." "No," you say. "It's a message." He looks confused but says nothing. You taste another cup, then another, then one more. They blur as they always do. But today, something has shifted. You're not just logging them, you're listening. Fun fact. Some ancient Sri Lankan texts describe tea not in terms of taste, but intention. A cup could be honest, brave, or in mourning. The British erased that system, replacing it with charts and codes. You sip cup just 241 and close your eyes. It's bitter, but not empty, and neither are you. It starts as a rumour, quiet, careful, and carried in glances. You first hear it from a boy refilling your rinse water. "Don't drink batch 63, he mutters, barely audible. Then he vanishes down the corridor before you can ask why. At first, you think it's a joke with sharp teeth maybe, but still, something said to stir the pot. But then you hear it again, this time from your assistant whispering just behind your shoulder as you log another bland cup. "Skip 63, just for today." You look at the list. Batch 63. Estate. Kahawata. Expected to ship in 5 days. No previous issues. Middle quality leaf. A little unpredictable in wet seasons, but nothing out of the ordinary. Except now everyone is quietly not tasting it. You walk to the storage room where the trays are kept. The leaves are already processed, wrapped and marked for shipping. But something feels different. A faint odour clings to the packaging. Not mould, not rot. You lean in closer, and then it hits you. Chili. Or maybe crushed betel nut. Something spicy. Off. Not in the leaf, but on it. You feel your stomach drop. Because this isn't just spoilage. This is tampering. You return to the tasting room, the cup for 63 already steeping in the centre of the table, steam rising innocently into the fluorescent light. You stare at it. So does your assistant. "You tasted it yet?" he asks. You shake your head. "I wouldn't," he adds. You lower your voice. "Why?" He hesitates. "They say someone's trying to make a point." You don't need to ask who they are. On this estate, the labourers are invisible until they aren't. Theories ripple through your head. Protest? Sabotage? A warning? It wouldn't take much. A powder, a resin, a drop of something toxic. Just enough to ruin a batch. Or worse. You sit down slowly. The cup is still steaming. The problem is, you're the taster. If someone's going to find out what's in it, it has to be you. And it might kill you. Historians still argue whether plantation resistance was more symbolic or strategic. Small acts like slowing harvests or larger moves like this. Potential poison in a teacup. But from where you sit, it's not an abstraction. It's personal. You pick up the spoon. Your assistant pales. "You don't have to," he says. "I do," you reply. "It's the job." You take a small sip, not even a slurp, just enough to wet the tongue. Then you wait. At first, nothing. Then a slow burn creeps across the edges of your mouth. Your lips tingle. Your tongue prickles. The bitterness is still there, but it's masked, hollowed out. Like someone poured rage into the cup and let it steep. You spit immediately, rinse twice, breathe. No dizziness, no nausea, just a dry heat, unnatural and creeping. Not lethal, but certainly not tea. You mark the batch with a single word. Compromised. No descriptors, no pleasantries, just fact. Your assistant leans in. "Will you report it?" You pause. "If I do, they'll call it sabotage. They'll shut down the estate, do an inspection, punish everyone. And if you don't, someone might drink it." He nods. "Either way, someone suffers." You think about that all day. You don't tell the manager, not immediately. Instead, you mark batch 63 as delayed for re-evaluation and quietly remove it from the shipment roster. Your assistant makes no comment, but his shoulders drop in silent relief. That night, you lie awake, tasting ghosts. You think of the boy in the field who told you some cups are sad. You think of Anil, punished for honesty. You think of the old man under the jackfruit tree saying bitterness is truth. And you think of this cup. Not bitter, not bold, just a quiet scream in your mouth. Fun fact, in ancient Ayurvedic medicine, bitterness was considered the flavour of awakening. It wasn't meant to be pleasant. It was meant to shake you. You've never understood that more than you do now. You rise from bed and light a lantern. At your desk, you open a clean page in your tasting journal. You write, batch 63, not tea, not poison, something in between, a message no one wants to read. You close the book. Outside, frogs begin their nightly chorus. The air is thick with jasmine and humidity. And in the distance, faint but unmistakable, you hear another drumbeat. Not for ceremony, for warning. You let it echo inside you. And this time, you listen. The storm doesn't wait for your permission. It rolls in just before dawn, silent at first, like a predator creeping low along the ridge. The sky darkens so gradually you think it's still night, until the thunder cracks loud enough to rattle the glassware in the tasting room. You're already awake. The tea samples are stacked in crates by the doorway, ready for morning grading, and someone, probably your assistant, left them uncovered during the night. You swear softly, again. By the time you reach the loading area, the rain is in full command. It isn't just water, it's a full monsoon tantrum. Sheets of it pour from the sky, cascading off the tin roof like broken waves. The crates are already soaked. The burlap sacks meant to protect them are flapping uselessly in the wind, and the ground has transformed into soup. You and 3 others scramble to move them under shelter, slipping on the slick stones, tea leaves clinging to your sleeves and neck. One box tumbles, splits open, and dark, glistening leaves spill across the ground like the guts of a patient on a battlefield. You kneel to gather them with your hands. They're ruined, waterlogged, slick, already starting to stick together, and tomorrow they'll smell of mildew. Your assistant yells something over the rain. That batch was for Bombay, but it's barely audible over the drumming of the storm and your own heartbeat. You stare at the leaves in your palms, the idea that something so small, so delicate, could be at the mercy of something as big and careless as weather. Well, you suppose it's a fitting metaphor for everything here. You let the wet leaves fall back into the dirt. Back in the factory, you peel off your soaked outer shirt, hang it over a pipe and sit beside the drying racks. Steam rises from the damp floor. Somewhere, a drain gurgles with effort. You sip hot water with a little salt, an old worker's trick to calm the nerves, and wait for the sun to do its slow work. Historians still argue whether monsoon seasons were a logistical nightmare or a natural equalizer in colonial economies. You know it as both. Because out here, even empires have to wait for the rain to stop. Later in the morning, you gather a few salvaged batches and begin tasting, carefully, methodically. One is sour, too long in the damp. Another has absorbed something strange from the air. Mud? Rot? You're not sure. The flavour reminds you of wet rope and memories you don't want to keep. You write, unstable, possible mould, sample under protest. Your assistant returns holding a thermometer and a face full of bad news. Drying rooms at 83% humidity. We're not going to hit baseline moisture by tonight. You nod. Of course not. You walk with him through the factory where workers are repositioning fans, adjusting racks, cracking windows for airflow. It's all frantic motion, but the truth is tea doesn't rush. It either dries the right way or it spoils, and when it spoils, it lies about it in flavour. It hides its shame in subtle ways. Muted fragrance, uneven mouthfeel, bitterness that feels angry instead of bold. That's your job, to catch the lie. You pass by a woman loading racks, her hair twisted into a tight bun, her shirt clinging to her arms. She hums something under her breath. It's not a song you know, but it settles in the back of your mind like a comfort you forgot to ask for. You pause beside her. Do you think it'll dry in time? She shrugs. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The simplicity of that response, so direct, so outside of the colonial fixation on timetables and shipments, catches you off guard. You nod, thank her, and move on. Back in the tasting room, the last of the morning samples waits. You lift the cup to your lips, expecting disappointment. But no, this one is strange, alive. The rain must have done something to it, some strange alchemy. The flavour is loamy but rich, a touch of smoke, a whisper of something green and electric like lime leaf or thunderclouds. You sip again, eyes closed. You write, unexpected, deep, tastes like survival. Your assistant raises an eyebrow at the word. You grin. Fun fact, in high-altitude regions of Sri Lanka, tea plucked during or just after rainstorms is sometimes considered superior. Not in the official records, but among local drinkers. They say the leaves remember the sky. You believe them. By afternoon the rain breaks. A shaft of sunlight slices across the factory floor like a divine afterthought. Workers stretch their backs, laugh, shake the water from their sleeves. You walk outside. The ground still squelches beneath your boots, but the air smells new. Earth, steam, jasmine, relief. And in that smell, you catch something else. Hope. Not the grand British Empire kind. Not the kind they toast with port in London. No, this is smaller. the hope of a leaf that wasn't ruined, a batch that wasn't lost, a worker who still hums in a storm. You sit beneath the awning and sip the last of your water. Not tea, just water, and you let your mouth rest. Tomorrow will be more crates, more damp leaves, more cautious notes scribbled under pressure. But today, you tasted a storm, and it tasted like it meant it. Night falls on the drying racks like a slow exhale. The air is heavy with post-monsoon damp, and everything feels just a little slower than usual. The factory's usual roar has quieted to a low hum. Lamps flicker against the humidity, casting golden halos that stretch across the walls in long, sleepy arcs. You find yourself alone, again, in the quality control room. Everyone else has gone to dinner or bed, but you're here, checking trays, inspecting leaf batches by lantern light, trying to rescue what the rain tried to erase. The drying racks are arrayed in rows like sleeping animals. Each one bears a load of half-processed leaves, their edges curling upward, their colour somewhere between moss and ash. You move slowly, gently. You know too well that a careless brush of a sleeve can overturn a day's worth of drying. You bend over the last rack. Your fingers hover above the surface of the leaf pile. The warmth is uneven. The fans haven't reached this corner. You sniff, subtle, but it's there. Mildew. Just the beginning. Faint. A whisper. The kind of thing a London buyer would never detect, but you would. You mark the tray with a red ribbon, the silent code for watch this one closely. No need to alarm the manager yet. Not unless it spreads. You move to the next rack, dragging your lantern behind you, its frame creaking slightly. As you work, your hands begin to shake. Not from fear, not from exhaustion, but from that creeping pulse of quinine again. The pills. You've got to take one today. You sit down on an overturned crate, pull the small tin from your coat pocket, and swallow the bitter disc with a sip from your water flask. You don't even flinch at the taste anymore. It's the one bitterness you've grown accustomed to. Quinini's for the mosquitoes, officially. But unofficially, it's for everything else too. The headaches, the fevers, the creeping, unnamed fatigue that settles in your joints after too many damp days. Fun fact, tea tasters in Colonial Ceylon were among the highest consumers of quinine, and among the most resistant to acknowledging its side effects, like tremors, insomnia, and night sweats. You lean your head back, rest it against the wooden slats of the rack behind you, and close your eyes. You're not sleeping, you're just listening. To the faint click of the drying room fans, to the drip of water somewhere near the back wall, to your own breath, uneven and strange, like someone else's lungs have taken up residence in your chest. And then, a sound, a soft rustling. You open your eyes and spot a rat darting across the floor, vanishing beneath one of the far racks. You sigh. If it chews through the burlap again, the whole batch will be contaminated. You make a note. Set traps tomorrow. Again, you stand, stretch, and continue the inspection. The last rack surprises you. Its leaves are nearly perfect, drying fast, even in colour. No signs of mildew or foreign scent. You lean closer, inhaling deeply. It smells peaceful. You cup a handful of leaves, roll them gently in your palm. They feel like paper, like memory. You could tell just from this moment that they'll brew clean, balanced, with a finish that lingers just long enough to be missed. You set them aside as a sample to taste first thing in the morning. For once, a small victory. You extinguish the lantern, one rack at a time. The room darkens in slow, deliberate stages. The silhouettes of the racks look like ribs now, like the inside of some great slumbering beast. You walk back through the corridor barefoot. Your boots are too soaked, still drying near the stove in your quarters. The coolness of the tile against your soles is oddly comforting. It reminds you that you're real, that your body still remembers sensation. Outside, the night is thick with jungle sounds, 1,000 tiny creatures harmonizing in pitch-black chorus. You pause under the awning, watching the distant hills flicker with heat lightning, and for the first time in days you smile. Not because anything has changed, not because the work is lighter or the air is cleaner, but because you tasted a moment, and it didn't taste like compromise. Back in your quarters, you peel off your damp shirt, wash your face with cool water, and stare into the cracked mirror. Your reflection looks older than it should, mouth tight, eyes hollow, but beneath it all, a small ember, still tasting, still trying. You pull your tasting journal from the bedside drawer and write, night drying, batch 14, subtle, consistent, shaped by silence. Finish tastes like rest. You blow out the lamp and listen, one more time, to the drying rack settling in the dark. The first taste of the morning is a lie. You know it instantly. The leaves look right, smell right. The colour is textbook. Clear amber, not too pale, not too dark. But the flavour? Flat, empty. Like someone painted a portrait of a memory instead of remembering it. You swish it around your mouth, hoping something might reveal itself. But no, it's a silence disguised as tea. Your notes are brief. No defect, no soul. You push the cup aside and move to the next. It's barely better. Slightly more astringent, but again, no voice, no character. It's a blend that will pass inspection, pass shipping, pass lips in London, and leave nothing behind. You feel it in your stomach. That sinking, slow realization. Today's shipment is going to be hollow, and you're going to mark it excellent. The manager walks in mid-slurp, already flipping through the export logs, not bothering to greet you. Buyers want this lot logged as grade A, he says without looking up. You tap your spoon against the ceramic. It doesn't taste like grade A, he pauses, looks at you. It doesn't taste like anything, you add. That's what they want. He says it like it's obvious, like it's always been true. And maybe it has. Historians still argue whether colonial exports were about quality or predictability. You're living proof that more often than not it was the latter. You pick up the next cup, same story. Technically fine, emotionally bankrupt. By cup 7, your tongue feels like sandpaper. You rinse with warm water, pinch your nose, and power through. At one point, your assistant says something like, "Batch 42 might be a bit green," and you just nod, too tired to care. It's not the bad tea that wears you down. It's the indifferent tea. Because bad tea has character. Bad tea has the audacity to challenge you. Indifferent tea just obeys. You write your notes in tidy, efficient phrases. Brisk, subtle, clean, balanced. You feel like you're describing a ghost. When you finish the last cup, you lean back and rub your eyes. The tasting room is warm, stuffy. Your temples throb with caffeine and resignation. The manager flips through your logbook. These are fine. They're hollow. They're sellable. You watch him close the book, stamp the approval forms, and tuck it into the outbound tray. That's it. They're going. Across oceans, into parlours and tea rooms, poured into delicate cups and sipped between biscuits. And not one person will know what this tea could have been. You walk to the edge of the factory toward the loading bay where crates are being packed into the lorry. Workers move in slow rhythm, strapping the heavy burlap packages, stenciling the codes. KHA 58, HLD 03, MR 44. You know these codes, you know these leaves, and you know these cups won't make anyone feel anything. You think about changing your log. Just one line. Just one note that says, "This tea is tired. Let it rest." But you don't. Instead, you sign off the shipment with your initials and step aside. Back at your quarters, you boil water. Just water. No leaf. You stare at the pot as it steams. For a moment, you wonder if this is what purity tastes like. Untouched, unflavoured, honest. Then you think about the old man under the jackfruit tree. Bitterness is truth. You think about batch 63 and the ghost heat that still lingers in your memory. You think about all the silent cups you've tasted and called good when they weren't anything at all. And you wonder, what happens when you build an empire on forgettable flavours? Fun fact, a single shipment of Ceylon tea could travel 7,000 miles in 45 days, pass through 6 ports, 3 inspection stations, and 2 sets of customs, yet never once be tasted by the people who grew it. The disconnect is dizzying. You open your logbook and without thinking flip to a blank page. You write, "Shipment logged as excellent. Correction. Tastes like nothing. A cup-shaped absence." You close the book and you let the quiet settle. Outside, the jungle stirs with life. The trees are still damp from yesterday's rain. A peacock calls from somewhere on the ridge. You stare at your empty cup of water and wonder, if tea isn't allowed to be bold or bitter or flawed, what's the point of tasting it at all? Sleep doesn't come easy anymore, not because of the heat, it's always hot, but because your mouth won't stop tasting long enough to rest. Even in dreams there are cups, always cups. Some bitter, some strange, some blank as silence. You wake with the aftertaste of phantom brews clinging to your tongue, like smoke from a fire that never happened. Tonight's no different. You lie in bed, eyes open, ceiling fan groaning above you, the moonlight slicing through the window in the watery silver. It's quiet. Jungle quiet. Which means you hear everything. The buzz of insects, the rustle of leaves, the creak of wooden boards expanding in the heat. You rise, not because you want to, because something is stirring inside you. A question, maybe, or an ache. You pull on your shirt, still smelling faintly of yesterday's drying room, and walk barefoot through the empty halls of the bungalow, past the tasting room, past the office with its eternal piles of unfiled reports, out through the back, into the warm night. The path winds down toward the lower fields. The moon lights the leaves in silver. Somewhere in the distance, frogs chant in unison like a misplaced choir, and you think, this is where the tea begins, not in the factory, not in the shipping crates. Here, in the dirt, in the dark, you kneel, touch the soil, it's still damp from the monsoon. You remember something the old man said under that jackfruit tree. Bitterness needs a story, or it becomes just poison. And it hits you, not suddenly, but all at once, like a wave you knew was coming but still knocks the breath from your chest. You've stopped telling stories. You've been writing numbers, grades, notes, acceptable, balanced, clean, all the words the buyers want, but you've forgotten how to listen. You stand slowly and begin to walk through the rows of tea bushes. Their outlines stretch endlessly across the slope, neat and controlled. Colonial neatness, imperial geometry. But you know, if you listen closely, the bushes still whisper old things, things the Empire never asked about. You find yourself at the far edge, where the fields give way to jungle. There's a small lean-to here, barely visible in the shadows. One of the pluckers sleeps there sometimes when the hike home isn't worth the effort, and there, propped on a rock, you see it. A tiny clay cup. No one would notice it. No one would care. But you know immediately, this isn't for buyers. This is for memory. You lift it, smell the rim. There's a trace of leaf left in the bottom, damp with dew. Not processed, not dried, just boiled and poured. You sip. It's wild, it's wrong, it's perfect. It tastes like sap and heat and something you can't name. It tastes like someone else's morning, someone else's struggle, someone else's pride. It doesn't apologise. You sit on the rock and sip again. This isn't tea meant for London. It's tea meant for living. And you think, why haven't you tasted this before? Fun fact. Before British standardisation, tea in Ceylon was as varied as the soil it came from. Sometimes spiced, sometimes smoked, sometimes served in coconut shells or poured through banana leaves. It was never meant to be standardised. That came later. You drink the last of the leaf water and place the cup back on the rock, carefully, as if returning a favour. On the walk back, you feel something loosen in your chest. You're not sure what, but it's real. Back at your quarters, you open your tasting log, not the official one, the other one, the private one, the one you don't show the manager, and you write, "Tonight, I tasted something no one paid for. It was bitter, sharp, alive. It reminded me of a voice I haven't used in years." You stare at the words, then underline them. Outside, the sky begins to pale. Another day is coming, another table, another round of cups, another row of polite lies. But tonight, you remembered, and that's something. You wake before the bell. It's still dark, that soft, inky hour just before the estate comes alive. The space between the last insect chorus and the first cough of a waking worker. You sit up slowly. Your mouth is dry. Your body feels like burlap, coarse, heavy, used. But something inside you is lighter. You don't dress in haste today. You choose a clean shirt, run a comb through your hair, even pause to wipe the dust from your boots. It's not vanity, it's ceremony, because today you're tasting differently. In the tasting room, the table has been laid out as usual. Pristine rows of cups and spoons, trays of leaf samples stacked by estate and grade. Your assistant is already there, stifling a yawn. But something's changed. You step to your spot and breathe. Deeply. Not the shallow utilitarian inhale of a man checking for mould, but a full, reverent breath. The room smells like memory, like heat and clay and yesterday's sweat. And underneath it, tea. Real tea. You lift the first spoon, slurp. It's floral, soft, slightly muddled in the finish. But instead of logging acceptable, you write, like a letter started and never sent. Your assistant glances over. You shrug. The next cup. Smoky. Strong. Notes of citrus rind and rain. You write, bold. Wants to be heard. By the 5th cup, he's watching you openly. Sir, he says carefully, is this the new system? You smile, gently. It's not a system. You don't explain. You don't need to. Because today, you're not grading. You're describing. You're remembering the field worker who hummed while laying out the racks, the boy who imitated the monkey, the old man with the crushed leaf under the jackfruit tree, the woman in the market whose spice blend whispered truth doesn't need permission. Today, you're giving the tea its voice back. Historians still argue whether colonial tasters ever truly connected with the cultures they dissected daily. Most didn't. Some tried. Few listened. You taste a bitter cup from the Kahawati batch, the one you nearly condemned last week. But today, the bitterness feels earned. You don't spit. You sip again. You write, defiant, a fist inside a cup. Your assistant laughs just once, not mockingly, just surprised, maybe relieved. A crate thuds outside the tasting room. New arrivals. The day is beginning. You hear distant shouts, the clang of metal, the first whistle of the shift bell, but inside it's still quiet. You reach the last cup. It's nothing special, really. Mid-grade leaf, slightly oversteeped, the kind of cup that gets lost in the shuffle. But as you taste it, you feel something small and important. Comfort. You close your eyes. It tastes like someone lighting a fire before dawn, like hands rubbed together, like a promise made to no one in particular. You write, gentle, stays with you. Then you close the logbook, and this time you leave it open on the table. Not for the manager, not for the buyers, for whoever comes next. Because bitterness is a skill, but remembering why you taste, that's the real talent. And you've finally remembered. Wind down, a prolonged 300 words. So now, we step out of the factory together. The night has returned, the racks are empty, the cups are clean, and the world outside the estate has gone quiet again, wrapped in velvet darkness and the hush of slow-growing leaves. You're still standing at the edge of the plantation, fingertips brushing the tops of the bushes. Somewhere in the distance, a single drum beat echoes. Not a warning, not a threat, just rhythm, just life. And in your mouth, there's no tea now, just the aftertaste of memory. It lingers softly, not sharp, not sour, just present. You close your eyes. The wind smells like old books and firewood. The soil beneath you is still warm, and you feel for once like you're not translating the world into flavour. You're just being in it. The bitter cups, the perfect lies, the cups that screamed, the ones that healed. You've tasted them all. And in doing so, you've become something else, not just a taster, a witness. So rest now. Let the leaves dry. Let the sky darken. Let the soil dream of roots. You've done enough for today. And when you wake, the tea will still be waiting. Different, maybe. But true. 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 But true.